Hello and welcome to a new video, and indeed welcome to the first video of 2017. I know it has been ages since I've made a video, and believe me, I tried to make one, especially just right after that Switch conference there was in January, but I just had technical problems with the computer and everything, and I've been very busy. But I am back now, and I'm going to try and get back into the swing of things, see if I can get steady stream of content coming out for you guys. So today's topic, I want to talk about the Nintendo Switch. I know, big shock, it's coming out in a couple of months. Pretty much anyone who's into Nintendo is talking about it. Pretty much anyone who's just kind of not particularly aligned with PC or a particular console brand other than Nintendo is talking about it. Because it's kind of a very controversial system. It's sitting in a very interesting place, because obviously Nintendo are coming off the back of, other than the Wii really, diminishing returns in terms of their console sales, especially the GameCube and the Wii U being their two post-2000 consoles, other than the Wii not really giving a lot of hope, and people are kind of wondering, can they do it? Can they break back into the market? And the Switch is certainly changing things up. It's certainly looking different than the GameCube and the Wii U. So I hope it does succeed, because, it's an innovative piece of hardware, and I think we need more of that in the video game industry. But I just want to talk about what I think is the biggest worry I have about the Switch, and that is, I don't know if it's necessarily finished right out of the gate. And what I mean by that is, I think they're kind of rushing it to get it out for that March 3rd deadline that they set themselves. So, for example, this all sparked in my mind when I heard that the Switch wasn't going to be launching without an internet browser. Now, some people are saying that it may never get an internet browser. I think that would be asinine. I think having an internet browser is a really good value proposition for the Switch, especially if you couple that with streaming services. People might just buy a Switch because it's a cool tablet that they can watch Netflix on, and they can, go on the internet, browse, maybe play a few games, and they can just plug it into their TV, and so you've got this kind of tablet, TV, all-in-one device, and I think that adds a lot of value to the system. But right now Nintendo is focusing on video games, and obviously early out of the tracks, that does make sense, because the kind of people who will buy a device like this straight away are the kind of people who want to play games on it, the kind of people who want to play Zelda, the kind of people who want to play ARMS, who want to play Splatoon 2. But also, the streaming services are also missing. Now maybe this was just a case of the apps not being ready or whatever, but it does show that Nintendo is prioritizing games, because they know that that hardcore video game market is what they really have to hit as strong as possible, because they are the people who will, obviously ripple out and tell other people, and that's how people who just maybe buy this thing for streaming services will come to buy it, because there are people like that. There are people like that who maybe they only play FIFA or something, or maybe they don't even play any games, and they just have something like a PS3 because it's a very convenient Netflix box. So basically, this means that they didn't necessarily send dev kits out to the guys who make Netflix and the guys who make Amazon and maybe the YouTube app or Hulu if you're in the States. And you might say, well, that's fine, they're focusing on video games. But it does kind of worry me that perhaps it's also because they intended to have those features in, but don't, because, the thing's just being shoved out. Everything from the Wii to the 3DS to the Wii U, they all had internet browsers. And it makes me kind of anxious that it's just because they really need to get it out in this March 3rd window. Now, why would they want to do that exactly? Wouldn't it be just shooting themselves in the foot if they pushed out a console that was just not ready? Well, there are some advantages to it, and there are some reasons why they may have done it, and I've got a couple of them here. So, for starters, you may notice that the launch lineup, while when you look at just what's going to be there on launch day, it's all right. You got Just Dance, you got a couple of indie games, and you've got Zelda and Bomberman and Skylanders. The problem is people are focusing on that, and that's very small. But if you look at the launch window and you kind of broaden that out to be between March and May, you realize that there's a lot of games that are just kind of trickling out very slowly. You've got ARMS, you've got Mario Kart 8, and you've got Splatoon 2. And they're all at very nice intervals that you could conceivably see that by late March, early April, that's when you'll be finished Zelda Breath of the Wild, and that's when you'll be ready for something like ARMS. And then late April you might want Mario Kart 8, and then you're getting into May and you're maybe you've had your fill of Mario Kart, you want Splatoon. And that's why I think it's spread out very smartly. But isn't it kind of strange that they're all coming out this quickly? I mean, it's a bit like the case of Smash Brothers, where they couldn't have it ready quite for the GameCube's launch, so it came out like 2 weeks afterwards. And I think it's the same case here. I think the launch was moved forward, and it was meant to include games like ARMS and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Maybe not Splatoon, maybe it was meant to launch in April or something. But, Splatoon, well, actually, Splatoon is nearly probably ready at this stage, considering they're actually going to have a demo for it available in March. But they could be trying to pull it into the March window. And here's another reason why they might be doing it, because it's the dead season. Sony, Microsoft, they're not really doing anything at this stage. Ghost Recon Wildlands is really the only other game I can think of that's coming out in March. I suppose there's For Honor, just came out recently, I think. But that is what that is. And you can notice it because at the moment Nintendo are dominating the airwaves in terms of video game news, especially if you look on YouTube and whatever. If you look on Google Trends, it's getting 4 times the amount of traffic that the Wii U was, and nearly as much as the PS4 did. Certainly more than the Xbox One did as well, which is interesting to see. But it could be also because there really isn't much else going on at the moment. There's a lot of news coming out about little updates about Splatoon and about Zelda and whatever, and there really isn't much else. When was the last time you heard a big bit of Sony news? The last big Microsoft story I remember was them cancelling Scalebound, which isn't exactly a positive thing. And I think they're trying to capture everyone's attention, make sure that everyone knows this thing is coming out at the very least. The other thing is that March marks the end of the fiscal year. It's a bit weird how this works. Basically, in business terms, if you have shareholders, you tend to do quarterly reports, and it goes from March to March as opposed to January to January. Why they do this, I'm not sure, but it's how it happens. And the 2016 fiscal year, hasn't been great for Nintendo. I think, in fact, whatchamacallit, Pokken Tournament came out just before the end of the last fiscal year, which makes the only real big successes within Nintendo's fiscal year for 2016-2017 being Pokemon Sun and Moon, which obviously sold the most of any Pokemon game, which is positive, and Pokemon Go. But that's just Pokemon. I mean, Tokyo Mirage Sessions did good for a game of its style, but it didn't do great in general. And also, Wii U hardware sales have started to slow. 3DS, I've heard, even though its hardware sales are also slowing, its software sales are higher than they've been, but, it's kind of a hollow victory, because what really was there in 3D, in terms of the 3DS, except for just Pokemon? I feel like the reason it is higher than they've ever been is just because Pokemon sold so much that it just pushed it that little bit they needed above it, just to kind of paint the marketing figures in a positive light. And so therefore, Nintendo needs the Switch to show that they've got something that is growing and they've got something that is really positive, because they need to get shareholders on their side, especially after the whole Mario Run I suppose you could call it a controversy. I thought Mario Run was actually quite a good game. I liked the way they weren't afraid to price it like a premium game, which is what it was. but it didn't do that well because of that steep pricing, and shareholders were not happy about that. And that's why you see things like Fire Emblem Heroes with its, not premium pricing coming out in February, and you've got the Switch coming out in March. It's because they're trying to get as much positivity into that end of 2016 fiscal report, so that coming into 2017 the shareholders are happy, and it'll obviously give them a little room to breathe as a company. And really, that's it. Because of all those reasons, I think the Switch is coming out a bit ahead of when it's ready. I feel like it would have been better if it could have launched with stuff like an internet browser and a Netflix app. Not so much a YouTube app. I feel like it tends to be better on the system browser anyway, especially on the Wii U. The Wii U's browser is actually great for YouTube, surprisingly. Surprisingly, the Wii U's browser is a lot better than anyone would think it should be. Obviously, I would probably prefer to use a desktop browser, but if I was just casually going on YouTube, I think it works quite well. And the Switch doesn't have that. And I'm just concerned that that means that Nintendo won't necessarily be able to give it the punch it needs out of the gate, because you really need those early adopters to be singing the system's praises if you want it to do well. And honestly, Nintendo does need this thing to at least do better than the Wii U, and probably, hopefully, do better than the GameCube, because otherwise they're going to look like they're just caught in a downward spiral with no hope of really, coming out of it other than maybe the odd success. So, I don't know, what do you guys think? Please tell me below in the comments. Please like the video if you thought this was interesting. Maybe it was a bit disjointed, in fact it probably was. But please, start a discussion in the comments. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I tend to make videos like this a lot. So if you like it, please subscribe.